Welcome to Daily Life Connection as we continue to explore who God is and what difference that makes in our lives. Today I want to begin in Psalm 66 and verse 19, when the writer says, "Truly God has listened. He has given heed to the words of my prayer." Truly God has listened. Let's talk a little bit today about the God who listens. That's a wonderful and comforting thought to me. There are so many times in this world when we are talking with somebody and we know they're not really listening. I'm sure I'm guilty of that a good many times as well. We get so distracted. We can get distracted by our phones. We can get distracted by what's going on around us. We can get distracted by situations we're thinking about or that are impacting us in some way. We can just become glazed over when people are sharing with us, when people are talking to us. But that's never God. Never God. He's never distracted. He is always listening to our prayers. He's always listening to our hearts. And that is so wonderful to know that God doesn't just kind of jot down, oh yes, Reed prayed again today, but he knows exactly what I was praying about. He knows my concerns. He knows the things that are important to me. He hears my prayers. He not only hears, but he listens. I think that's what's really so important about this characteristic of who God is. A God who really listens. That's a wonderful gift, isn't it? Sometimes when we do it well and we really listen to somebody, they will end the whole conversation by saying, "Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening." And oftentimes that indicates that they've tried to tell their story before, but people didn't really listen. And how we listen, God listens with a loving heart. He listens to us like a parent who loves their child listens to their story about the day at school or what they're thinking about for the next day, that sort of thing. So, that's the kind of God we have. He's a God who listens to us, really listens, really gives us his ear. It says he gives heed to my prayer. He takes it seriously. He takes my conversation seriously. Isn't that another great gift? Sometimes somebody will start talking, and I have to be honest, I'm thinking, oh, this is boring, or this isn't important, or here we go again. But God's never like that. When we begin to pray to him about the situation that we've already talked to him about 100 times, he isn't saying, oh, I'm tired of hearing this. No, he's a God who listens. He listens to our heartbeat. And that's so important, isn't it? Because I can think of situations where somebody shared something with me, and I listened or tried to. And then, maybe a few weeks later, they shared the same situation with me, and I try to listen. And maybe a month later, they share the same thing again with me. And it's easy to just say, oh, I've heard this all before. But if I'm really listening, I will listen for how they're framing it differently this time. I'm listening for clues as to how their attitudes toward the situation are changing, or how the situation is changing, or the desired outcome may have changed. Maybe they're no longer thinking, oh, I want this, but they're thinking, this is how I would really like to see it resolved. So you know what I'm saying? Even though the scenario may be repetitive, if I'm really listening, I will hear how they're changing, how their perception of it's changing, how their desires in that situation are changing. And that's what God does for us. He does it incredibly well. So don't be hesitant again today to tell him the same things you've told him before. Don't, sometimes we think, oh, I've prayed for that, I shouldn't pray for it again, maybe it isn't faith or whatever. Well, there's an interesting story in the New Testament where the blind man was calling out to Jesus, and Jesus was busy in the crowd, and he called out over and over and over and over until Jesus responded. And what did Jesus say about him? Your faith has made you well. So telling God the same stories over and over again isn't a lack of faith. It's a lack of understanding, maybe. It's a lack of not hearing because I'm not listening to God. But it's all right. It's all right. It's how sometimes we work through things, is talking them out. And the good news is we have a God who really listens. So be encouraged with that today as you talk to Him about your life, about your friends, your family, your situations. Just realize He is listening, listening well to what you're saying and to your heart. And He will respond in kind to what He hears. That's good news. Let's think about it. We'll talk again tomorrow.